first let them know that they're underperforming, right? So we'll walk through the process of how we let them know that. So our objectives here in this section are to identify the difficulties faced when you counsel an employee, because that's difficult, right? Especially in a county like yours, where again, these are people that you have to deal with outside the workplace on a regular basis. We're going to go through here a sample of an 8-stage performance counseling model. Don't get too worried. The 8 stages really can be boiled down to 4, but I want to give you as much information as possible. Implementing solutions that address the root cause. That's one of our objectives, is learn how to do that. I talked about the 8 stages, but they really kind of boil down to these 4. We're going to describe what the performance concern is. There's 2 steps to do that. We're going to clarify what our expectations are of the employee as the supervisor, because that's our job, right? We get to set the expectation as the supervisor. There's 2 steps to that. Then we're going to identify what is the root cause of this underperformance. Because can we correct something that we don't know what's causing it? When you bring your vehicle into the dealership for service, there's a problem with it, it's not running right. Did they just replace the entire engine? Did they just start replacing things? It feels like, yeah, they've built. But no, they're going to run tests to figure out where is the problem before they try and correct it. So we want to do the same thing here. And then ultimately we want to be able to agree with the employee on what the solution is to solve this performance problem so that we can get past it. Okay, so that's what we're going to do, figure out how to do here. So again, the first step in the process is to describe the performance concern. Then we're going to state what we expect. We're going to explain why the standard is important. Because how many of you have or have had teenagers? They don't even have to be teenagers yet. Why? Why? And once they get to be teenagers, because I said so, or because I'm your mother, or because I'm your father, it doesn't work anymore, right? They need to know why. And it's really important as human beings that if we're being told something is important, we need to understand why is it important. And as supervisors, we'll talk a little bit later about looking at organizational issues, but if you're stumped on why it's important, that why they need to meet this expectation, maybe you need to take a look at what you're asking them to do and what your expectation is. If it's really not important to the county, why are we having to do it? But most of the things we have on those job descriptions are important. We need them to be done, and so we need to explain why that's important. And many times for a lot of us, it's because it's the law. Right, Sheriff? It's easy for you guys because it's the law. That's the way we have to do it. You want to express your concern, a little bit of empathy here. I want you to be performing up to speed, and this is an area where I can't give you top marks. I want you to do better. Determine the cause of the situation. We'll spend some time on that because there's a real method to figuring out what the cause is. Want to look for solutions together and then discuss each solution and offer assistance. And then ultimately we want to agree on specific actions for follow-up so that we make sure that this concern goes away. Okay, so let's walk through each of those. Describing the performance of the concern. Describe the employee's behavior in specific and behavioral terms. Avoid absolute statements that use words like always or never. Another one that you can't use with teenagers, sure can't use with your spouse, right? You're never on time. Avoid that with your employees the same as you do with your spouse and teenagers. Use examples to illustrate the situation. Again, remember our discussion about taking notes? This is where this is going to be critical. You've got those notes and you can tell them, You can be specific about what it is that they've been doing and use examples. You know, last month you were late 14 times. There were 27 or 23 work days in the month and you were late 14 times. That's a good illustration. Again, we want to describe these specific, so problem statements that aren't specific, like her work is not completed in a satisfactory manner. If that's her statement to them, what do you mean? What's satisfactory? Doesn't tell them much, right? Has a poor attitude, talks excessively, consistently interrupts others. What you want to get to, the way you want to have this discussion with your employee is, you're 50% deficient in meeting work quotas, 20% of your work contains errors, which results in 8 to 10 complaints per week. Now that's clear about that they're not completing their work in a satisfactory manner, right? He was tardy 8 days out of 10, absent 4 days in the past 2 months, laid his head on his desk during his training, and made 10 errors this week. Very specific. And if you're taking those little notes as you know that this is becoming a problem, you can do that. That's much better than you got a poor attitude. Right? Because will they remember that any of that? No. Maybe the day's off, but they won't remember that they were late. They sure won't remember that they put their head down in training.
There may be some specific times when you're mentioning somebody, and then you cause conflict in the department because of something that you said to them that somebody else was saying about their performance, and then have a conflict there.
Right, and that's our next session.
Okay.
Is when people aren't getting along with you or other employees, how do we deal with that? Because we need to be open and honest, and sometimes that's going to mean that we use information that we get from other employees and the public too, right? We have to let them know how others see that they're doing. Because how many of us has had employees that have had to pick up the slack for the Slack? Who enjoys that? No one. So when you're not doing this with the employee who's underperforming, all you're doing is driving the morale of the good employees down. So that's why these become even that much more important.
But even sometimes you have these specifics, that employee still disagrees with you.
Well, and if we get through the whole process and they disagree, and at the end of the day, it's, well, this is my expectation. We're setting this goal. If you don't meet the goal, then the next discussion will be in Mary's office. Because you're not staying here if you don't meet my expectations. Ultimately, people, that has to be the discussion. If you don't meet the expectations of me as the representative of the county, you won't be working for the county anymore. Again, that's what the other employees who have to pick up the slack deserve. That's what taxpayers deserve. And some of you guys, especially in the law enforcement area, when we have this kind of a problem, is that the same employee that all of a sudden has a really big, they do something that was really boneheaded and really has the department in trouble now? Yeah. Because they don't recognize when they're not doing their job. They're not paying attention to what is expected of them in their position. And ultimately, eventually you will have a really bad situation to have to deal with. That maybe if you had taught them through this process with the little things, to pay attention, to be paying attention to what their job is and taking it seriously, they wouldn't have done the really big, bad boneheaded. Did you have a question there? And instead of she talks excessively and interrupts others, she interrupts her coworkers at least once every 30 minutes and does 50% of her assigned work during a full day. You know, and that kind of stuff you can track, depending on the type of work that you do, you can track well, how much are the other employees getting done in a day versus what this employee is getting done in a day? You know, I used to run reports all the time that I was able to run overseeing claims people of how many claims did they open up, review, and work on during the day. I could run those reports from the computer, and I could show someone, you know, Jeff over here and Todd and Mary are all doing double the number of cases a day than what you do, over and over and over again. What's the problem? So try and find a way that you can do that. Base someone's performance against another. And some employees do different tasks than others with small departments, and there's just no way to do that. But then again, you got to go back to what your expectations are. Do people get defensive when we have these discussions with them? Yeah, it's human nature. You should expect that. So describe performance, not their personality. You're lazy. We both know you're just a lazy person, and I know you don't like coming to work, but you still have to be on time. That's not lazy. Reduce defensiveness by not attacking the employee. You want to say, I'm very concerned about this situation, rather than you have a problem. You see the big difference there? You have a problem. Who wouldn't get defensive about that? I want to help you out with this. I've noticed this, and I want to help you out with it. Avoid absolute statements, again, here, the same as we did earlier with don't be using always or never, unless it is always or never. If you say you're always late, you better have documentation that they've never been to work on time. And be specific. Use numbers and or examples. Again, taking notes will help you do that. Zero in on one key behavior you need modified instead of attempting to change a number of behaviors in one interview. And this is the difference between this and an annual performance appraisal. Because if you wait for the annual performance appraisal and this person has a half a dozen issues that are problems for you, they talk too much, they spend too much time at the water cooler, they're late for work, they upset other employees, they're not respectful to the general public that come into your office. Trying to deal with all of those issues in one sit down will be near impossible. But if you break them up and deal with one issue at a time with this method, it's more manageable for both you and the employee. And I'd say deal with the smallest one first. I mean, you've been living with it for how long anyway? Deal with the small ones first, get them used to this process, and when they see that they can have success with it, you can move on to the bigger problems, unless the big problem has to be dealt with right away. So step 2, we clarify our expectations. Again, you want to be specific. You use dates, numbers, and examples to describe exactly what the job performance is and what that you expect. I expect that you are going to get all the carts unloaded and shelved by the end of the day. That's my expectation. But make your statements realistic. If that's not realistic during a certain time of year or whatever, then that shouldn't be your expectation. Do not immediately mandate solutions. Begin with describing what you expect them to do. And if you go through this process, it sounds like, boy, it sounds like an awful lot to go through just to get better. But a lot of this is meant to get them thinking about it, and they will have recognized that they have a problem that they need to correct and have some ideas about how to correct it by the time you even get there, by laying it out very clearly to them, okay? The key questions are, what are the requirements for this employee? So again, go back to the job description if you need to see what it is that is clearly expected of them. What is it that you expect of them? And it should match with the job description. If it doesn't, then change the job description. Get it to Mary and change the job description, and you have that discussion with them. What specific things do I want this employee to do? And again, if there are specific tasks that need to be done that they're not doing, you can refer to them. This is different though than telling them what the solution is, how they're going to fix the problem, because we're not there yet. I need you to do the accounts receivable. That's something that has to be done. Is appropriate here. Specifically, what's the measure of good performance? That's another way as we expect to talk to them about our expectations. Again, by the end of the day, by the end of the month, every day, weekly. We want to set our measure of what is good performance. So, describing the performance of concern, two different ways to do it. The employee is tardy an average of 1 day of work per week and has been absent 2 days during the past month. So, what you would state as your expectation is the employee needs to arrive on or before 8 o'clock each morning 19 out of 20 times in a month, and during any 4-week period for the next 6 months. That's very specific, that's measurable. And if they don't meet it, then you didn't solve the problem and you need to go back to the drawing board on what the solution is, or what the cause is. Again, use specific statements due to regulatory requirements. The allowable error rate is 0. And a lot of us have that, right, in our departments. The taxpayer does not accept mistakes. Breaks are 10 minutes. Simple, clear. All employees are to be at work before 8 a.m. You want to avoid saying those same things like, I expect better performance, you really need to work harder, or you got to change your attitude. Because again, that's management mumbo jumbo, just like the guy in the video said. Right? Employee's perspective and your perspective. So we need to explain why this is important. So from your perspective, it might be that you want to explain why should he or she want to keep his or her area clean, if that's the problem that you're having, or why is it important for the employee to get to work on time? You need to, from your perspective, explain why that's important. It's important for you to be on time because we have people coming into the building, and if you're not on time, they can't be served. And their expectation is when they get here at 8:05, there's someone here to do the work. You want to look at, are you talking about increased productivity? Is it about staying in line with other departments and efficiency, being efficient as other departments in the county? Good perception to the constituents, clients, and other employees, because that one's really important, right? I mean, a lot of what we do as government employees is making the constituents feel like we are doing a good job, justifying our positions. So that's really important, and the employees need to understand that. If the taxpayers don't think we're doing our job, eventually they're going to vote people out of office that want to increase taxes, and there's just not going to be equipment or salaries or any of that we need to keep doing the job. We need to have the public feeling like we are doing a good job as government employees. And of course, your perspectives tend not to be as important to the employee as what their perspectives are, right? So we need to overcome that in this process. If the employee feels that substandard performance is no big deal to management, he or she probably won't take it very seriously. So again, this is an important step to explain why it's important to you and the organization. Because, and I know I just did a training, this training with a health district where they got a new health district manager, and literally all the supervisors just retired. It was like, I made it, I'm out of here. So the entire management staff had been there for less than a year. And they inherited a lot of employees that for years, substandard work was, okay, no big deal. We're government employees. We're just, they can't fire us if we're doing substandard work. And so that group really had a hard time breaking that mindset that substandard work was no big deal. And anybody inherit employees like that? It's a tough situation to get them to understand there's a new sheriff in town. Substandard work's just not acceptable anymore. Now, note that those first 4 steps, describing the performance concerns, stating the expected standard, explaining why the standard is important, and expressing your concern with them not meeting that goal, that's a monologue. They don't talk. And that was the mistake that the gal made in the video, right? She let the guy run the meeting before the meeting even started. When he grabbed her and said, I know that I'm jumping the gun a little, her response should have been, yes, you are. Let's go in and sit down because I have some things that I need to tell you before you tell me what your feelings are. Don't be shy about that. If they start talking during this monologue, cut them off. Because otherwise, it all starts to go down the rabbit hole, and it will be a back and forth, I don't agree discussion the rest of the way. So be confident, have these ready, succinct, clear, and that's why we're only going to deal with one issue at a time, so that you can get through this in 2 minutes. This isn't a half-hour monologue. It's not even the Johnny Carson monologue. It's a real short, I'm very concerned about your tardiness. I expect that, that you're here on time. It's very important that you're here on time so that the public can be served. And you've been tardy 15 times this last month. And so that needs to be dealt with. But if they try and cut you off in the middle of that, you stop them. Just let me get through what my concerns are, and then we'll talk about it. It will make it easier. It sounds difficult, but it makes it a lot easier. Because then, once you've gotten through that, now we're going to start talking about what's causing this. Because probable causes might be different depending on what's happening and what's expected. So if you lay out what you see happening and what is expected, getting to the cause is going to be a lot easier. Identifying the right cause is critical so that the appropriate solutions can be developed, right? If the thing we think is causing the tardiness is not the thing that's causing the tardiness, and we've developed a solution based on what we think the cause is, will the tardiness go away? Nope. So that's why we have to root out the cause first. And this is the time that we look for just causes, not solutions. Nope, we don't want to get ahead of ourselves. So once you've done your monologue, we go to here. Tell me what you think is causing this tardiness issue. Well, Jane told me that it was okay if I came in 10 minutes late, that it was no big deal. Oh, didn't know that, right? Does Jane set the expectations, a coworker? No. But if you thought that it was just that they weren't setting their alarm on time, that's a whole different deal. So I don't expect you to read this whole thing. This is just a case study about, so the employees had outbursts of anger, they criticized other employees, they can't get along with others. So the supervisor's been giving them criticism, kind of teasing the employee about their demeanor and attitude, you know, saying things like, someone's gotten up on the wrong side of the bed, if you don't like it here, maybe you should find another job, or good customer service is part of your performance, and you need to provide better customer service. Have we all done that? I know I did that once in a performance appraisal saying, you know, if you don't like it here, you can find another job somewhere else. Try to stay away from that. We all know it's true, but you really start getting people defensive. The supervisor wrote memos, did status reports, things like that, but the behavior never changed. So based on that, what do you think you'd do differently to try and identify what the cause of the employee's behavior was? Ask them. Yeah, that's step 3, right? Find the cause by asking them, what do you think is causing this problem? The interesting thing about this case study, though, is that there were over 1,000 leaders that were given this case study, and 95% of them suggested that the causes were with the employee, was the major part of the problem. And why did they decide that the problem was with the employee? Because that's human nature. You see the symptoms in the employee, so obviously it's got to be something about the employee that's causing the problem, right? But we need to think, again, going back to the 9 dots, think outside the box. Maybe it's not the employee that's causing the problem. Are we looking at ourselves and the organization when we're looking at that? Maybe there's something that's going on in the workplace that really that person hates coming to work. Maybe they're being harassed by another employee that we'll get to later in the day. And so, yeah, they can't get along with the others in their department because the others in their department are harassing them daily about their religion. And you didn't know that. You thought the problem was with the employee, and the problem is not with the employee. So that's why it's important to open our minds when we start talking about what are the causes. Maybe it's just a misunderstanding that job description or the procedural manual that we have on how to do the work isn't clear, or is outdated, or is just dead wrong. Okay? And so you see it as a performance problem. They're just getting the job done in a way that it can be done by not following the past practice or the rules in place. So look for organizational problems as well. So as we're here again, it might be the individual or the personal issues that they have. It could be outside influences like other employees causing problems for them. But again, it might also be managerial or organizational in nature. Think about causes that might be coming from all of these different areas. So as we're looking at trying to find causes, if you're really stumped on what could possibly be causing this issue, especially when we've got an employee who has never been a problem before, certainly this area has never been a problem before, and it's just started, and you really are stumped on what could be the cause, you can turn to some, any past records to see if there's an observable pattern. Yeah, they're late for work, but it always seems to be Monday, or it always seems to be Friday. Is there a pattern to the problem that they're having? Has it always existed, or is it recent? So the cause is probably recent too, right? If the symptoms are recent. And how's the employee's performance compared to others? So are they just the worst in this area, and everybody else has the same problem, just not as bad? Or are they the only person that has this problem? Because if others are having the same problem in different degrees, it's more likely that the issue is here with the organizational or managerial issue, or at least some kind of outside influence that they all have in common. And also look to, does the employee have an awareness that their performance is substandard? Sometimes you can tell that they know that they're not doing it right. Sometimes you can tell that they have no idea that anything's wrong. That's important to know if you're going to find the cause. And again, having knowledge of what's expected is important if we're going to find the causes. So before you have this discussion with them and you're looking at causes, you want to make sure that you have enough information and try and see where else you could look or who else you could talk to. So if you have another department that's similar to yours, certainly with the different branches of the library, talk with the other branch managers. What is this problem with this employee? Are you seeing the same thing with any of your people? Because maybe they've identified the cause already that could help you out with it. Okay, so we want to ask open-ended questions with the employee to try and figure out what the cause is. Again, cause, not solution. We're not to solution yet, we're at cause. So open-ended questions are the who, what, where, when, why, and how. You know, this wasn't a problem until 6 months ago. Is there anything else that happened in the last 6 months that might be causing this? Those are the types of questions that we want to be asking. And try not to arrive at the first thing that they say is, yep, you're right, I think that is the cause too. Now let's talk about solution. Draw out several things that it might be. Because a lot of issues and problems aren't one cause, right? There's a couple things going on maybe. And many times people think that the cause that they see easily, quickly, that really isn't the cause. It's another symptom of what's causing the problem that they see, and they think that that's the cause. So in this step, try and get at least 3 or more things that could be causing the problem written down that the two of you have discussed. And this area is for you to listen. And certainly don't offer your suggestion on what you think is causing it first. Let them give you a couple of ideas about what might be causing it before you suggest anything. And even if they bring something up that's totally out of the park, wait until you've got them all listed first, and then you can scratch that one off the list as we go through the next step. Okay. But don't start shooting them down right away, because that's what's going to make them defensive. If they see that you are listening, you're writing them down, yeah, okay, well, let's talk about that. But what else do you think might be causing it? Again, we want to make sure that we're getting to causes, not other symptoms. Well, yeah, my wife says that I'm late for all my everything, my kids' meetings and stuff too. Yeah, you're right. That's the cause. Well, that's not a cause. That's another symptom of something else that's making them late for things. Try to come up with 5 whys. So again, at least 3, but 5 better. Because again, especially if they've given you a couple that are way off the mark, and you know you're going to scratch off the list, get more of them so that you have a couple of them that really could be the legitimate root cause. So step 6 is then trying to develop tentative solutions. So now that we've got a list of things that might be the cause, and Actually, I always like to, if I've got 5, then go back and talk about them and say, well, here's the 5 that you brought up. Which do you think really is the main thing that's causing this problem? And now that they've had a little bit of time to think about it, and so have you, you can maybe hone it down so that we can talk about what the solution is. Because having solutions with 5 different causes is tough. Having solutions for 1 or 2 causes, much simpler. We want to brainstorm a list of solutions for each major cause before evaluating the quality of the solution. So, and this is one way to whittle down the list as well, is just, okay, so if the cause is number 1, how are we going to solve that? If the cause is number 2, how would we solve that? If the cause is number 3, how would we solve that? And so talking about how you would solve the causes will probably scratch some off the list. Discuss the positive value of each solution before destroying it for reasons why it won't work. And there will be. They will come up with solutions that just don't work for you. But discuss it. Don't say, well, that's not going to work. We're not even going to talk about that. It's, well, how do you think that will solve the problem? And you may see that would solve the problem, and it may very well solve the problem, but here's the bigger problem that solution creates. Now we're not in compliance with the law anymore if that's the solution. So that's the discussion in this step. You want to seek out ideas from others, again, other supervisors that might be seeing the same problem, other coworkers that aren't having the problem or are having a similar problem to a lesser degree. When you're looking at solutions, if you're just, the 2 of you are completely stumped, that's where you go here and say, well, now that we've identified some potential causes and we've got some potential solutions, let's break and get back tomorrow and you talk to your coworkers and your family members and see and think about this, and we can come back and talk about it again. And you can gather some more information. Again, this solutions issue shouldn't be, again, if you come in and say, here's your problem, here's what I think's causing it, here's what I want you to do about it, they are going to get defensive. And the fact is, what you thought was causing it, and certainly what you think might solve it, may be way off the mark. You might find that what they suggest as a solution is much better than you anticipated. It might be something that you would have never expected that they would suggest that they would do. You didn't think that they really cared about their career, but they're suggesting, yep, you know, and I'm gonna take a night class to get better at that. Oh, yeah, that certainly is a solution to the problem. Would have never guessed that you would agree to do that. He or she is more likely to change behavior if the solution is his or hers, right? Again, teenagers. When they're told what to do, nobody likes being told what to do. They prefer to be doing things that they believe they came up with the idea. Everybody likes that feeling. So that's our mission here, is many times they will come up with a better solution, but even if they end up with the solution that you had in mind in the first place, make them believe it was their idea, and they'll be more committed to it. Simple human nature. The employee will see that the leader is genuinely interested and concerned. Because I know a lot of supervisors want to be the employee's friend. You can't be their friend. You can be their friend, but not as a supervisor. As a supervisor, you need to be their leader, interested in their career and that they're meeting their goals. That's your job as a supervisor. Many times when you're trying to be a friend as a supervisor, you're failing in your supervisory role because you're not being honest with them. You're not pushing them to do their job the way that they need to. So again here, over and over again, what you should be saying is, what do you think we should do about this? And what other things could we do? Because again, just like the causes, we should come up with a couple of different solutions. Now that we've got our list of potential solutions, now we talk about each solution. So the employee tries to do the, I'll work harder, I'll try harder. Well, how specifically, how are you going to do it? What do you mean when you say you're going to try harder? I need to know, because we need to leave here with specific measurable goals to get you out of this situation. So here you start offering some assistance if you need to get them to the point of identifying specifically how they're going to solve the problem. Urge the employee to take ownership of their job and participate in the process. Don't let them just be, slid down in the chair, yeah, whatever. Just tell me what I need to do. You need to get them involved in this, because otherwise you have a bigger problem. If they're not interested in correcting performance, that's a bigger issue. And you need to make sure that they're aware of that. And then, now that we've got, and we've agreed on what the solution or solutions are, we want to make sure that we agree on the specific actions that are going to be taken to get that solution carried through. So we're going to, that will help us get their commitment. It'll reduce any misunderstanding about what they are going to do to correct this problem. They're going to spell out the leader's expectations very clearly, what you expect of them. It's going to state what both the leader and the employee have agreed to do. We're going to establish target dates by when the actions will occur. Because again, they might do a little bit right away, and then it'll sit until you've told them, we need to get back together. Remember that we set out that we were going to meet in 6 weeks, and that's next Tuesday, and then they'll get back to it again. So set dates and make sure that you don't have things going out too far that they'll slack on it. And it also commits you to the follow-up as well. So don't leave these meetings without a specific date that you are getting back together to discuss it again. Because we all know that that won't happen if we don't set a date, right? Some common leadership misconceptions when it comes to this whole issue of subperformance. Positive recognition is not needed for doing what should have been done all along. If people are getting positive feedback when they're doing things right, certainly that will feed their yearning to do better at everything, right? If they're getting that positive recognition. And different people need different amounts of that, right? A lot of us traditionalists and baby boomers didn't need a whole lot. We craved doing better, but we didn't need that constant, oh, good boy, you're doing great. One of my concerns with the millennials, they need a participation medal for everything. Hey, I made it to work today. I'm on time. Okay, here's your medal. And you need to sort those people out. Who needs a lot of this positive reinforcement and who doesn't? And make sure that they're getting, but even the ones that you don't think need a lot of it, still give them that slap on the back and let them know that they're doing great. So don't forget that. Even the people who have a problem or two in the areas that they are doing good, give them that positive recognition. That might drive them all of a sudden to say, wow, I really am appreciated. They're really paying attention. You know, I've been late a lot lately. I got to stop doing that. If progress toward improvement is noted and then the employee reverts back to the old behaviors, they'll feel foolish. There's a little bit of truth to that, but not enough to have it be your management style. So if they start making improvement, follow up on it. Make sure that they know that you see the improvement. Make sure that you're pushing them for additional improvement. Don't let them slide back because you think that they would feel foolish if they slipped that way. They probably won't. Maybe, but if they're that type of employee, they probably wouldn't have had a problem in the first place. Negative behavior demands attention, improved behavior doesn't. And that's not the case. Again, this process of doing these counseling sessions on individual problems are meant to be building blocks of building a better employee. So when this process works on one issue, really stress that, push it with them. Make sure that they understand that, hey, we did it. This is great, and you're really improving. We're almost there. You're almost over the goal line. So let's keep at it. Let's get this done. And then once they're over the goal line, then you can wait maybe a month or two, and then bring that next issue that you'd like them to be dealing with. And that's going to be a lot easier, right? Because, hey, remember when you had the problem with your tardiness, and we were able to sit down and we worked it out, and you're doing great. I'm so proud of you the way that you've solved that, corrected that issue. Today we do need to talk about you're getting along with the other people in the department. And so let's try that again. I think that worked really good. Let's talk about what's causing this and how we're going to solve it. And they'll be more open to it because they've had success. And it'll be easier for you. Common misconception, leaders don't have time to follow up. I'm as bad at this as anybody. We're really busy, aren't we? But if we aren't taking the time to improve the behavior of our employees, we're going to have even less time, right? Because again, now you've got all the other employees trying to pick up the slack, and you're picking up the slack. So take the time. You got to find it. So, as kind of a summary, when we prepare for the coaching, or when we fail to prepare for the coaching session, ready for it, we just get upset. We've had it, setting them down right now and doing this. When we conduct a counseling session in order to chew out the employee, we're not really looking for solutions, we just want to vent. When we fail to be specific in describing the situation, when we make too many problems in one session, when we tell the employee exactly what we expect them to do to solve the problem rather than what our expectations are, when we assume that we know the cause or that our solution is best, and when we don't listen to what the employee has to say and we make no effort to follow up, what's the result? We should know that the problem is not going to go away. Just sitting them down and chewing them out. Has anybody ever had just sitting them down and chewing them out work? Never worked for me. When you get good at this process, it won't seem like it's 8 steps. But yeah, you need to touch on these pieces, I think, to get to a result where you're actually going to correct the behavior.
And I hit a nerve with me because I had an employee that I had told them that they only could take off in an emergency. They had built up a lot of missed times or late for work. And so it built up to a point that this morning we're going to correct that. Came in late. I said, we're at the stage now where this is going to the next step. And then they told me, oh, my brother died today. I needed to be off. So I just come in to tell you that. And so, that's great. That was not timed very well.
Right. Yeah. Again, listening to the employee can uncover, because when we do all of this, we're not just doing a disservice to the county and to that person's career. We might be doing a big disservice to them as a person, right? Because the problem might be they've developed a drug problem or a drinking problem, or they're having marital problems, or their child has developed a drug problem. Things like that that we don't know about, and we would have never guessed were the reason why they're being late to work. Because they've got to scour through their child's room to make sure that there's no syringes or any of that kind of stuff. I mean, listen. And because again, building confidence with your employees that they realize that you do care about them as an employee, you care about their career, and you care about them as a person, and have their respect for that, it's much more important to have them feel like you're their friend. Okay. So a couple of important tips. Again, maintain open and two-way communication with your employees. Don't, we all say we have the open door policy, right? And you leave your door open. That's not what that means. It means that your employees are comfortable to come to you and talk about a problem anytime. Somebody can have their door open and people know you never go through that door unless you want to chill it out or be open with them. Investigate each situation thoroughly to ensure accurate and complete information. Again, that's before, when you see the problem, do some investigation as much as you can ahead of time so that you're not coming into this completely blind. Follow your policy, and that's an important one. I see supervisors miss that step all the time, that they are dealing with employees in a way that doesn't follow the HR policy. So make sure you're consistent with that. And be consistent with determining and delivering discipline to all employees. That's really important within your department, certainly, that if employees see that one person gets disciplined harder or less severely than everybody else, that's going to cause a problem in your department. But it also causes a problem countywide, because when we get to the courts and an employee's discharged, terminated from employment for being absent, and they can show where absenteeism is rampant throughout the rest of in other departments and no one's ever been terminated for it, it doesn't matter if that termination regularly would be enough to terminate the employee, because it wasn't consistent with other employees of the same employer. Courts are not going to let you terminate the person. There's a little bit of difference with law enforcement and public safety. Some things are more problematic when you're talking public safety, but for most of you, there will be a day when you want to discipline an employee and you have every reason to discipline that employee and you need to discipline that employee, but you're going to be held back from being able to discipline that employee appropriately because someone else in another department was allowed to do that over and over again. Don't let that happen. How often does this group get together and talk about management? How are you dealing with discipline as a group? Because that might be a great next step.
Well, department heads and elected officials get together monthly.
Okay.
But not all independently supervisors.
Certainly at the department head level every now and then to have that discussion about, are we all comfortable with the discipline policy? Are we all following the discipline policy? Is one department letting things slide that need to be disciplined and another department is disciplining more than its share? That discussion needs to be had amongst you. So that, and in a group like yours, all the different branches, the discipline should be equal based on what the problem is from one branch to the other. They're all employees of the same employer. And again, involve human resources early. Not that you need to have Mary there in the discussion, but to let her know, I'm sitting this person down next Tuesday to talk about this issue. And so just so that you know. Because she might have, well, that's odd. I had 2 other departments tell me that they're having that same problem. And now you've got maybe some other places to go to find causes and solutions. Other resources are, again, your manager or others, human resources department. If you have an employee assistance program and the problem is something to do with the person's personal life, maybe they want to see a counselor about some of the issues. Training sessions, I know our online training portal has a bunch of different training sessions that might be helpful for correcting some of these behaviors. The review of the employee handbook, and can Google just about anything these days, so there might be some things you can find there. Questions on performance counseling? Does that sound like easier to deal with one issue at a time than to deal with annual, here's how you're doing, and we got 6 different problems that we need to talk about today? I know I've gone to this process, and I know several other counties have, and it makes that annual performance appraisal really just a culmination of, okay, we had 3 different issues that we dealt with in counseling sessions, and 2 of them we're great on. This last one you're still working on, but you're making headway, so that's good. And you had all these great things that I want to make sure that you're recognized for that you did during the year. End of appraisal. Okay. 5. Okay, back at 5 after. I'm going to give you hourly breaks because this is a long day for me as it is for you.